I'm back with John DiGirolamo, and we had him on the show not too long ago. If you haven't heard this episode, I want you to look this one up. It's called Protecting Teens from Human Trafficking, and it's John's fight against child exploitation. Really good stuff. This has become a rampant thing in our country. We've been hearing more and more about it online and on the news. But we're going to continue a little bit along those lines, and then we're going to jump into another topic totally. So this is going to be a three-part series with John because he's got a new book out that was released a few months ago, and it touches on all of these things. So we're going to hit this hard. We're going to glean from John. John, welcome back to the show. We thank you for coming back on.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. So your new book, we'll briefly touch on it. And again, I'm going to put this preface at the beginning. This is not a book review. I found John a while back, and I loved the research that he's doing on some of these topics. And this book, I'll let you talk about it, John, but this book really hits on three topics that I think are so incredibly important in our society today. So, John, I'll let you talk about the book. Tell us who you are for those who don't know and what you're doing.
Yeah, so I'm an author of 4 books, and I've kind of got a theme going where I'm looking to tell stories of what's going on in our society, and I've kind of focused on difficult topics: human trafficking, online exploitation, etc. And so my latest book, It's Not About the Devil, really talks about, the ultimate predator, which is Satan, and some of the evil going on in our society that is targeting vulnerable people. And so it's all nonfiction, where I'm interviewing real people. There's the case files, testimony, etc. And I'm putting together plot lines, story, emotion, dialogue, action, etc. to reveal what's going on in these people's lives, but also the broader picture of what's going on in our society, and doing that through storytelling. And so I call it dramatized nonfiction. I wanted to read like a fast-paced fiction novel, but it's all true, it's all real stuff. So, the devil is busy in our modern society, and his greatest trick is to convince us that he doesn't exist. And I think a lot of people have kind of fallen into that thought process in our growing secular world. So I focused on 3 people. I focused on a police officer who goes undercover online as a 13-year-old girl. And every parent needs to know what happens and how these predators are operating. The second story is about an abortion doctor who becomes a pro-life advocate, and it's a decades-long journey, and how that happens, and how she sees the value of the unborn. And then the insider's view to what goes on in an exorcism. I interviewed the guy who co-wrote the training manual for exorcists. So I really got the inside scoop. So really 3 different stories, but they're tied together by kind of the predatory practices of people and of really, evil behavior.
Boy, that's really good. And that's exactly why I invited you back, is because the enemy is real. Satan is real. Yeah. And he masquerades as an angel of light. We read through Scripture quite a bit about Satan and his practices. We're supposed to be wise as serpent and gentle as doves. We want to bring that wisdom that you've gleaned from these stories to those who are watching and listening, because it's so important to understand the enemy's tactics, because if we don't, we're going to fall for them.
Yeah.
And I think that's really what's happened to our society today. Is years ago, I think we were more sensitive to, things that were considered bad, and now it's almost like we praise those who are creating their own truth, and I think it's important what you have to say about each of these topics. So that's really what our podcasts, our next 3 episodes are going to be. This one, we'll talk about the online predators, and then we'll talk about the abortion doctor who experienced a shift in how she viewed that whole practice. And then, and it'll be in time for Halloween of all times. We'll talk about the exorcism stuff and what you've gleaned from that. So let's start off with today's episode, online predators. Now, last time we talked about this a little bit. We talked about the trafficking and how that can work, but I want you to tell us what you learned from this online predator situation with the officer. And I got to read just a little bit of the book. And it starts out with I believe a 14-year-old girl who, quote unquote, innocently shared a topless picture with the boy. And then you brought in this SRO, this officer who was in the schools, and had to deal with that. So let's kind of set the stage. Let me have you tell us then what you got from this, and tell us a little bit about the gentleman who is actually, these again are real stories. Tell us about the gentleman who's actually in law enforcement and was online posing.
Yeah, I was doing a lot of talks about human trafficking, and I kept getting questions about the online piece of that. And I wanted to explore the broader picture because there's a lot of predators out there online, but they may be doing other things besides trafficking. And it's actually a bigger problem than trafficking in general. So I interviewed Officer David Gomez, who's a very well-known police officer, school resource officer, who trains other law enforcement people, teens, as well as parents. He's got a pretty large Facebook following, and he gives tips on a regular basis. And so I wanted to profile his story, his life. How did he become an expert? And so it starts out with he's got this job in a middle school as a school resource officer, and he gets called to two kids fighting. Nothing really unusual about that, except to his surprise, it was because one of the teen girls had sent a topless photo to the other girl's boyfriend. And so it was causing a lot of drama. And what he discovered was that this was not a one-off. This was something that's happening in the middle school level as well as high school. And so the story starts out by kind of getting your attention of what's going on. What is going on with the teen brain at this time that makes them think that that's an okay thing to do? And so the story progresses of dealing with these two teens. The officer talks to parents who don't seem to be as involved or don't seem to be as disturbed by this as he was. And when he started investigating this, he found out that many of these boys were asking pictures from multiple people. And it just kind of blew up from there, where it went from these two people he investigated to it landed up confiscating over 20 different teen phones that had explicit pictures. And we're seeing teen sexting as a real significant issue. I've talked to teachers, people on superintendents, school boards, etc., and they all say, every one of them from around the country, that this is happening right under our nose, and it starts at the middle school level. And so, for his story, it developed into not just looking at that, but who else is out there asking for pictures besides classmates? And it really kind of, in his mind, begged the questions, why, where, and how predators are operating, because a predator could also approach a teen and try to get explicit pictures. And once they do, then it's not just in a classmates type of situation, which is bad enough, but it gets worse because then you have no idea who's on the other side of that digital transaction, if you will, or the other side of that keyboard trying to get this teen's picture. And so we really kind of explore the why, where, and the how, and I think that's something that we should go into.
Yeah, for sure. Now, you said something that is a bit shocking to me, and that is that the girl's parents didn't quite see the extreme, I guess, the shock of it all. My wife and I, we have now 20 and 21-year-old kids. They're in college age. They're college age, and back in middle school, this is something that we had discussions about because it was happening back then.
Yep.
This would have been 7-8 years ago. Why? First of all, why is this so dangerous? I get it, but I also know there are parents out there who feel like, it's going to happen. It's really not a big deal. And I think you'll probably get into that. But what initially do you have to say to those parents that just feel like, you know what, they're just kids. It's just a part of growing up in this digital age.
Yeah, those parents are not looking out for their kids. We live in a parental generation that wants to be the friend and not be the parent. You can be the friend when your kid is 30. When they're 14, that is not the time to do that. But if you look at kind of the broader picture, you've got the media, celebrities, etc., telling parents, you can do this in a safe way. You can, and I'm just here to tell you there is no safe way for anyone, kid or adult, to send an explicit picture of themselves. You lose complete control over what happens next.
That's
and
right.
We've heard of terms like revenge porn, where somebody sends a picture, they break up, and then the next thing you know, they're being extorted for some other reason.
Yeah.
The other piece to this is, what is the media telling kids? Well, it's telling them the same thing. You can do this in a safe way, send it to a trusted friend, etc. That just doesn't happen. So you've got this message telling kids, one, you can do it safely, and two, it's kind of no big deal. But the reality is once a person sends that, they lose control. And you look back at the why are predators doing this? Why do they want to exploit kids? Well, they're either looking to get pictures, to get money, or they want to meet for a physical encounter. So when it comes to sexting, there's ramifications that the teen brain is just not thinking of. One, those digital images last forever. A lot of times there's regret and shame. So they're going to many times have emotional issues, depression, self-harm, suicide, etc. And can lead to a lot of this cyberbullying, etc. But it becomes broader when it's not just a classmate, when it's somebody out there. And a great example of this is how predators target teen boys. And there's a tactic, a very specific tactic that they use. I've talked to more than one police officer who have said that this tactic can happen in less than 24 hours. And so what is that tactic? In practical terms, a teen boy will get approached online by a profile that's a very good-looking, say, college-age girl. And they're going to want to join their social network. Teen boy sees good-looking girl, click, sure, I'll accept that friendship, follower, etc. All of a sudden, that teen boy starts getting unsolicited, explicit pictures from this girl. Many times that could be downloaded from a pornographic website. So this quote, hot girl is sending explicit pictures to the boy. Then she will say, well, I've shown you, now you show me, and pressures the teen boy to send pictures back to her.
Right.
Many times they're tricked into this, they succumb, they will send these pictures, and immediately they get extorted for money. If they pay, 5 minutes later, they're asking for more money again. And if they don't pay, they will threaten to send these pictures, these embarrassing pictures of this boy to that person's social network, to their parents, their friends, their teachers, etc. This is a very real tactic, happens way too often, and now this boy is stuck. What does he do? His money's going to run out probably real fast, and he's going to have, a lot of mental anguish over this. And this is a real issue that we've seen, suicide attempts as well as, really taking one's own life because of this. And it can happen so fast. And that's what parents don't understand. This can happen in less than 24 hours. And that's just a really, really disturbing trend that we're starting to see in our society today.
So I think you kind of expanded on the general thought that it's just here within my community. It's just within my son or my daughter's school.
Right.
You just blew that out of the water because I know that. For those who listen and watch regular, I work at Covenant Eyes, my full-time job, and so we see the statistics coming in all the time of the same thing, that teen depression, teen suicide, the anxiety, all those things, and they really are related to a lot of what you just talked about. And let's face it, John, if we would have had cell phones growing up, our lives would have looked a lot different than what they do now, because generally, and this is a generalization, we all do things we wished we wouldn't have done when we were growing up. Heck, I still do them today, but you can't take those things back. When you say that stuff is on the internet forever, it really is. It's stored somewhere, whether you want to believe it or not. Talk about those kids who know exactly what you're talking about because they've been there. Maybe they've just shared a photo. Maybe they went through that extortion process. Maybe they have been asked to meet up with someone because of those sexting photos.
Right.
What do you say to those kids now that are kind of going, yeah, I get it?
Yeah, I mean, you can certainly, if you know where your picture has maybe been posted, you can try to scrub the internet of that. It is really difficult. There's different resources, such as the National Center of Missing and Exploited Children. They've got some resources to help parents not only have these discussions, but also to, what happens if the horses are already out of the barn, so to speak.
Yeah. But
they really have to have those. They have to have those conversations with their parents, with a trusted adult. They can't do it alone. Most parents are going to react with wanting to support their child and understand that they made a mistake, and how do you deal with it and move on from there. But until that kid has that discussion, they're really going to spiral downward, and the predator is counting on that embarrassment. They're counting on, well, you showed me this, now you got to show me more, putting that pressure on that teen, and then it just gets worse and worse, and they just can't get out of that situation. And so they've got to have those conversations. It could be something where, if they have been cyberbullied, there's definitely counseling available, and things like that. But they have to know that there are resources, there's people that love them, and they cannot solve this on their own. They've got to, go to that trusted adult, their parents, etc.
Yeah. Such great advice, John. The child or the teen who's listening right now, who's in that situation, listen, I've not been there. I've not had this happen to me, but I do know, as an adult, I know John is right on. There's hope. It may be embarrassing. It may be humiliating, but you need to go get the resources that are available to you to help you out of the mess. So don't think this is, there's no end to this. The hard part is just confessing and reaching out.
Yeah, I mean, now is the time, if you're in that situation, both for the parent and the child, to lean on God, lean on Jesus for that support,
Yeah,
for knowing that it's not just your parents that love you, God loves you too. Now's the
absolutely.
time to remind them all about that they're
Yeah.
not in it alone, and they've got a loving God who wants to help them get through this. And so it's an opportunity to kind of reiterate some of those biblical values.
Absolutely. John, you brought up one resource for parents who are listening. You know, go to a pastor, a trusted spiritual advisor, counselor. There's counseling out there that can help. And there's also organizations out there who are fighting this stuff daily, who know how to help you get through this. So, yeah, boy, it's a tough thing, but it's a reality in today's world. And John, such great advice. Is there anything else you want to finish with about this topic?
Yeah, I mean it's an awkward conversation, right? And I think it's one a conversation that has to happen often and early. You can't just have it when they're 15 and be done with it.
Yeah.
You've got to start out with having these conversations about predators, about being safe online, and honestly delaying their smartphone usage, their online activity as much as possible. So, there's things like dumb phones, which a lot of parents are using. There's parental control software, which is guardrails, but
Yeah.
is definitely worth looking into for sure. And if your kid has a smartphone, you've got to be diligent. You've got to be looking at that on a regular basis. And probably the biggest tip is the predators are going to where the kids are. So if it's a young kid, they're going to ABC Mouse, Roblox, Minecraft, Fortnite, social media, Instagram, Snapchat, and TikTok are the big three where they're hanging out. And so the place to check is going to be those chat rooms, private messaging, etc. And just look at those conversations. And you can kind of take a step back. Is you wouldn't let your 11-year-old wander the mall by herself. Why would you let her wander the internet by herself?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly right. The predators are out there and they're coming to your kids. Your kids don't have to find them. They are basically, in a really crude way, they're the bait. And those predators are going to find them. So you as a parent have to take those precautions. Look, more and more apps now are coming out where they can hide stuff so that even if you're looking at your kid's phone, there's all kinds of ways that they can hide those apps that John was just talking about, the Roblox and the TikToks and all those things. But parents know what your kids are doing on their devices. I've talked to other people who are experts in this saying, don't let your child take their phone into their bedroom or into the bathroom. Make sure that they're in a public place or in the living room with the rest of the family. It's just too easy for them to get sucked into this. So, John, that's going to wrap up this episode. I'm going to give you last word, but I really think that this is so incredibly important for our parents and for those teens who are listening and those middle schoolers who are going, man, I messed up. Listen, there's hope. John, I'm going to give you a final word, and then we'll move on next week to our next topic.
Okay, yeah, the kid may not be looking for trouble, but trouble is definitely looking for them, and
Yeah.
they just have to be aware of that. If they get a message or a friend request from someone they don't know, just ignore it. The problem is a lot of teens, they want big following numbers, big friend numbers. There's a little bit of self-esteem of having 1,000 friends and followers. I guarantee not all those 1,000 people are really your friend, and caution and prudence is definitely the way to go. And try to limit that time online. They could be addicted, even if there's not a predator. They could be just wasting a lot of time, watching silly cat videos. that's not great to do either.
Amen. Amen. Well, John, thank you for joining us. Parents and teens and middle schoolers who are watching, check out the links in the description, in the show notes. We're going to have some great resources there for you to follow up on. And listen, just be diligent. The enemy is like a prowling lion seeking who he may devour. It's just getting too easy in today's society. So, John, thanks again for joining us, and be with us next time as we talk about abortion.
Yep. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. Take care. God bless.